Bill.
1, 2, 3, 4. We got it.
We got it. Is it 6 or 5? 4,
5.
5? Everybody needs to get out of the house. I'll even come to Board of Adjustments meeting. Just to get out of the house.
You put a Texas road thing every week, right? All that.
We would pay. You want to figure it out? Yeah. She really wants to build, and it was not wrong.
By the next line.
But I think that was the whole thing, because it was so far forward.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Sure. Put your name on it.
Do you remember why?
How's the mic? Can you hear me? We're good? Okay. We got 8 people in here. That's good. Okay, the September 24th meeting of the Board of Adjustment now come to order. What we'd like to do is start with he says I got to talk louder, so here we go. We have like to welcome everybody here. It's nice, cool digs. Like to congratulate the town for the good work that they did, and so far so good. We'd like to start with an invocation. We have like to welcome a new member, Bill, and we ask him to have an opening invocation.
Let's pray together. Thank you, Father, for letting us be here to do what is essentially the work of God and be good citizens. Give us wisdom tonight. And I pray you'll not let us be like people at the top who just fight and fuss all the time. Give us, oh God, a spirit of cooperation together. I ask it in Jesus' dear name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the meeting agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes from October 24th of 2019.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Okay. The first meeting, or the first case on the agenda, will be Mississippi Road. I'd like to, we have people who are observing in the next room over. So they will, if we have folks there that are in the next room that are going to testify, we'd like them to come to the door for swearing in. Okay. And folks in here, what we'd like to do, we're going to keep separate. So I'm going to make a statement. We usually, we have to swear you in, and we usually use the Bible. So we're going to say, here's the Bible. I'd like those that are testifying to raise their right hand. Is the testimony you are about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Very good. So the first meeting on the docket is for Mississippi Road, NC Pin number 0710-65-0168. Before we start, I'd like to ask the board if there is anyone that have a conflict with this particular, after reading the packet. You can read it now for a minute or so if you'd wish, or if you don't, I just need folks to raise their hand if there's any conflicts from the board. Okay, having said done, we'll proceed on. I'd like, if I could, to have the town let's do this. Are there any testimony from the staff at this point? Are there any questions from the board before we start?
So just a quick introduction of what this hearing is considering. It is, as the chair mentioned, property on Mississippi Road does not have an address because there's not a structure there. So it's identified by the PIN number. It's a request for a 15-foot side yard setback reduction to 10 feet. I would like to point out that if you'll look at the site plan that you got prior to the meeting, the setback reduction is requested just for one side. The other side already has a 15-foot utility easement, so they wouldn't be able to encroach that area anyway. So I just wanted you to be aware of that for the record. And then
Which side is that?
it is
To the, where's the easement?
to the, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I see it, yeah, okay.
I would also like to mention for the record, the property owners adjacent to this property within 200 feet received notice of the hearing. And in addition to that, they received the same packet of information you guys received prior to the hearing, which included the variance application, the site plan, an elevation drawing, the location map of the property, and the findings of fact worksheet that you guys will use after all the testimony is given. Do you have any questions at this point?
Were there any comments from the neighboring lots?
We do have some, there are some neighbors here, I think, that want to speak, and then we do have some written testimony from neighbors that the town clerk will read when we get to that part of the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that.
We would now hear from the applicant and other proponents of the request. If there are attorneys or other representatives who will give a general summary of client's position, we'd like them to go first. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Keith Sanders. I was the applicant for this. I did the survey on this piece of property in 2018. When I put the zoning on there, I put the incorrect zoning. I put it as R2, which had a 10-foot side setback. That was the reason that we are now requesting a reduction in the setback, because the plans were drawn based on my survey, which showed a 10-foot side setback. So that is really the issue here. The plans were submitted for permit, and that's when it was discovered, what, a couple months ago. So that's the reason for the application.
Any questions?
One question for Keith. What's the width across that lot? I'm looking for it on the drawing, but I can't see.
The approximate width at right angles is about 55 feet.
Okay, perfect.
67, I think, is the diagonal distance.
Perfect.
And one other question, the gravel path that is in the easement, does that belong to the next door neighbors?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay. And so what is the dimension on the, well, you're probably not the right person to ask. Never mind. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to maybe just review for everybody. So a variance has to have a 4/5 approval. And what we like to do, the general rules by the state and the town ordinance says that we have certain very succinct things that we need to rule on. I think everybody involved in the case probably has a copy of those. So what I'd like to do is kind of focus us, if I could, on answering those questions, discussing the question and the answer. That way we all can kind of understand what's going on here.
And then for the public, just ask if we can use the microphones, hold them up close to your face. Someone watching.
I see. Yeah, okay, that's great. So we could be asking for folks in that room?
This is
Couple of them?
someone At home.
Ah, okay. All right, very good. Very good. It's a new world. Okay, sir, do you have anything else? And we'll proceed with going down each item, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, your response there, the question is, or one of the criteria is, there are unnecessary hardships in a way of carving out the strict letter of the ordinance. The courts have developed rules to determine whether a particular situation creates unnecessary hardship exists. State facts and arguments in supporting each of the following. So the hardship of the applicant complains is the result of a condition or existing feature that are peculiar to the applicant's land. Now, what that means by the state is that we're not talking about your buddies down the street's land. We're not talking about any other land than this particular land and the adjacent, how it affects the adjacent land. The answer is that you gave to this particular one is we are requesting a side setback variance of 1185, Plat Book 26, page 91. The lot is 54.6 wide, current setbacks of 15. The current 15 setbacks take up more than half of the lot width, resulting in less than a 25 wide building width. We're requesting a side setback on each side. So I'm going to throw it to the board for questions.
Well, that was revised because we're not asking for 5 on that
On
one side
one
because
side.
of the easement, yes.
On one side. Okay. We need to make that note, make sure we make that note.
So on the, which, would that be the north side? I don't know, which, the side that's,
Opposite the easement?
thank you.
Yes.
That's the north side?
It's if you're facing the lot, it's the left side.
All right,
It's
let's
probably
call it,
the easiest
let's
way
call
to-
it the left side.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is that dimension now? What, according to these plans, is that 10 feet?
That's 10 feet. Based on, you're talking about the architectural
The
plans?
architectural
Yes.
plans.
It's
So
10
that
feet.
is 10 feet.
10 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
At the time this area was platted, I guess the concept of 2-car garage was probably a little bit remote, but that's not the way it is today. So if you take a standard width of a garage that's 24 feet, that means the door has to be 1 foot wide if we keep these easements. I am no longer able to slide through a 1 foot opening. However, I wish there was a day I could.
Is that a conflict?
Oh, yeah. There's a conflict definitely in the size. But anyway, so when I look at this, I would say that your driveway, a garage is not functional less than 24 feet wide. So the variance really allows, and your plans show that, to allow for the front entry door to happen. That more or less it?
Yes.
Oh, microphone. Got it. Okay. Thanks. It's clarification.
Anybody else? So one of the things we need to look at is what's the minimum we can do if we were to approve of this? What's the minimum? So you're saying the one side is the minimum?
One side, 5 foot variance, yes.
Okay, the next one is special circumstances are not the result of actions of the applicant. Your answer was the property was purchased and designed based on setbacks of 10 feet. We were informed of the 15-foot setback upon applying for the building permit. Okay, so can you kind of explain, so basically what happened there?
Well, when I did the survey, I had it as R2, and it's actually R1 now. I went back, looked in my email chain. I couldn't find where I had received any email as to what these setbacks were, but I put it on there incorrectly. So that's what it really boils down to, is that it should have been a 15-foot side setback by code.
And when was this done? The sur-
2018.
2018, so only, okay.
Yeah.
And the difference between R2 and R1?
5 feet.
Is just the dimension of the setbacks, okay.
Were you advised by anyone in the town to go to the website to look at the ordinances or anything like that?
Back in 2018?
Yes.
Well, see, I've done hundreds of surveys. I don't know how many in Montreat, but quite a few. And I've always called and got that information from the town. But like I said, I didn't have an email chain or anything like that that said what it was. So it falls on me.
Was this done for the old owner or the current
The
owners?
current owners
So the current owners hired you to do this?
hired me,
Okay.
and yeah, they purchased the lot based on my survey.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on this particular item? Okay. The variance is in harmony with, this is item B, 2B. Variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and preserves its spirits. State facts and arguments to show that the variance requested represents the least possible deviation, that's what I was working with, from the ordinance letter, and we'll make a note of that in the record. Also describe how the use of the property, if the variance is granted, will it substantially detract from the character of the neighborhood? The answer is we have found that in general area of this site, that there are several residences that do not have the minimum 15-foot setbacks, including the residents next door. In these cases, they do not even meet the 10 side setback. The granting of a 10 side setback would not be out of character for the neighborhood, nor certainly for a 54.5 lot. Any questions on that? Man, you guys are quiet.
This is great. I'd only add to that, a quarter acre, this is less than a quarter acre lot. In similar neighborhoods that get laid out, whether it be a traditional T&D neighborhood, a lot of that side, it would be normal for it to have a 10-foot side setback, but not uncommon to see a side setback of 6 foot. And maybe that's what you were, but
Correct.
Adrian, you look at these things just more than we do, but anytime we've laid out a community in town, when it's that small, because of the required width to get into the home and have a driveway, you would normally default to a 10-foot side setback. But in a lot of cases, we went 6 when a lot was a quarter acre lot.
So would that take an ordinance change? Would, right? That'd have to be an ordinance change at this point. I mean, if we're ruling on the law as is, unless there's extenuating circumstances or hardship, the law is as written, right? It's 15
Right.
feet. Right.
But after this, after reviewing this, I think we ought to instruct the zoning group or the planning folks to relook at those setbacks.
Okay. Okay. That could be in the minutes if you would put that in there. Okay. Okay. The next is the granting of the variance secures the public safety and welfare and does substantial justice. I looked at everything the University of North Carolina and the government had to try to understand what substantial justice is, and I sort of found it. It's sort of there and so forth. The answer is if the variance is granted, the vacant lot can be developed and improve the value and aesthetics of the neighborhood. If denied, the lot will be considered unbuildable due to restricted width. As of January 2021, this is an old school thing that's been taken out of the considered unbuildable. That's a new, we probably all ought to review what's coming out in January. But right now we're based on current law. Any questions there?
Actually, I have a question for the owners. Was the survey done with the idea that if it was found to, how am I going to put this? Was the purchase dependent upon a survey that would show it be built, you know, were you going to, what am I trying to do? Was there a minimum amount of buildable space that needed to be there for you to purchase the lot? And was the survey done to determine that before you purchased the lot, or was the survey done after you purchased the lot?
The survey was done before we purchased the lot because we wanted to make sure we could build a house on it.
Right,
And
okay, so,
And then we worked with, you know, the real estate agent and the architect to determine how large a house, and we didn't want a large house.
right,
And this one looked like we had just enough space to build the house that you see in the plans.
okay. So that was, so if you'd found it, there wasn't going to be enough space, you wouldn't have bought the lot.
Correct, because we understood the lot was vacant for a long time and we wanted to see if it was not buildable. But then
Okay.
we found out that it looked like it was buildable based on the survey.
Right, okay, thank you.
So is capital punishment for the guy that does the survey? Is that the?
I think
basically.
I think you should pay for everything.
Forgiveness, grace and forgiveness always.
Okay. The item I, granting variance will not confer upon any applicant any special privileges that are denied to other residents of the zoning district in which the property is located. The answer is, again, the side 10-foot side setbacks are in common and still more restricted than several existing residences. No comment or questions on that? Okay, we'll go to literal interpretation. Provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other residents of the district in which the property is located. The answer is yes, the requested setback of 10 feet is still more than several existing residences. I'm not sure. Any questions about that one? I'm not sure that answer is.
Knock, knock. That doesn't have much meat to it, that answer.
Question may have been.
I would have,
Yeah. go
I would
ahead.
have answered that question back to my earlier comment. Deprive the application rights of commonly enjoyed. You want to be able to get into your home. That's the challenge. I mean, when I lay it out, you cannot get in. If we keep the setbacks like there, you cannot put a 3-0 front door on that home. And that's, like I say, I'm not so good at 1 foot.
So that would be a valid answer in your case, if that was there?
Yeah, that would be a valid answer.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, the answer that they put on the application is what they put on the application, so you have to determine whether they're providing the evidence necessary to prove the standards that have to be met.
Well, he's here, he can modify that answer on the request, right?
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
We were originally looking at 2 10-foot setbacks.
Yes, and now there's one.
Now, this one had to be 15 because there's an easement that can't be encroached, right? And so now instead of 10, is this a 5-foot setback?
No.
You're just
We're
on one
requesting
side.
one 5-foot reduction. The other side is not affected.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving from 10 on each side, according to this, to 5 on one side.
Correct.
No,
Or to
from
10 on
15
one
to
side.
10.
From 15 to 10, we
Got-
want a restriction, a reduction of 5 feet on the left side only.
5 feet on the left
Yeah, one
side.
side.
One
One
side,
side.
5 feet on.
Right.
A reduction of 5 feet.
And then item 3 is the variance is not to request the use of land, building, or structure which is not permitted in the subject zoning district. The answer was no, the single-family home is a permitted use. I had a little question on the land part, but, okay. Any questions on that? Do you have anything else for us?
I have copies of surveys, if you need to see them, of adjacent properties that show less than 5-foot setbacks within the general area, if you need to see them.
A little higher definition because it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, they're 11 by 17, so
Oh, good.
I've got them there if you want to see. I've got 5 copies. So if you want to see them, I can pass them out.
Would you like to
I think it's
that?
important to have it in the record.
Yeah, you bet.
Five sets here.
Just pass it down. I'll just grab one. Thank you.
These 5 different homes or 5 copies of one house,
There's 5 different sites.
5 different sites, okay.
This is the current site. We don't need that.
Okay. That's fine.
I'm good for sharing.
That's 2.4 feet on the sides.
Oh, Virginia Road, I see.
How do 5 of these get into the record? How do these 5 originals get into the record? Do we hand them to you?
I have Virginia Road. This is your text, right? I have that one. That one.
Yeah.
If you just make sure she has a set of 5, and then they'll be in the record.
Okay.
Now, are any of these new constructions since, I think it was 1985, the ordinances were put into place of 15-foot setbacks? Are any of these examples new constructions since?
I don't know when they were built.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adrian, we got no response from the adjacent. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have others that wish to present or speak? Okay. Okay, well, then I guess what we need to do now is, let's talk about these items one by one.
No, need the statements.
Oh, I didn't realize it was on. I
Yeah.
didn't realize it,
If
okay.
there's anybody in the room that wants to speak, they can go first, and then we'll do the letters.
I see, I didn't realize that, okay. So hello in the other room. Welcome to our meeting. I hope you can hear this. We'd like to bring forward anyone who, one at a time, you guys can figure it out. One at a time, we'd like to bring you forward so you can speak to the this case.
We didn't really have anything to present, but we're available to answer questions if that's, something.
Okay, I'm sorry, and your role or
Pardon?
your role or
My name is Matt Ashley, and I helped the Mayers purchase this lot as a real estate agent.
okay. We have to assume standing, so that's why I asked. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, if we have a question, I will yell through the microphone and say, come on down.
Okay, the other person in the other room is the builder that the Mayers have hired, so
Okay,
that's what he's here for.
I'm an architect, again, call off if needed.
great. That's great. Okay. Go ahead, sir. Can you state your name and your,
I'm Mark Oliver Jr. I'm here to talk to my dad. We live next door at 161 Mississippi.
To
This,
the left or
to
the
the
right?
right.
To the right.
To the right, yes. We have a considerable amount of concerns over this, not to mention the fact that they still can build a house that's 25 feet and falls well within the easement. It's unfortunate that a surveyor made a mistake, and we're really here because of that. And then when I read through this rules, I'm not clear on where it says when somebody makes a mistake, we grant a variance. And the variance is a permanent variance that affects Montreat and its landscape. There's some arguments made that it improves the value of the neighborhood. It's a green space right now. It's gorgeous. It's why we love Montreat. Also, it is a stormwater. It is a stormwater easement that comes through. The water comes ripping through there. There's 60-year-old pipes that go through there and things that have to be maintained. I'm curious on how that intends to go forward. Those things break down, probably overdue. I would like to see the plots submitted because they're probably all pre-1985, which is when we made the rule. Montreat came together and said, we don't want to be Asheville. I live in Asheville. We have a 6-foot variance. Houses are on top of each other. We have to protect Montreat in some way, and those rules were made in that intention back then. I'm just concerned about the manner in which this was done. No offense to them, but we have many people missing codes here. We have many architects pulling up things, not checking variances, which I understand they're going off a survey, but it took a couple minutes on Google to find a code to read through, a phone call to remedy a situation. Instead, it's proceeded on as if our variances, our rules don't matter. We had addressed the 2-car garage. It is not essential to a dwelling to have a 2-car garage. You just need a driveway, place to park your car. There's street parking available. And let's see, we have lots of concerns. I know no one here seems to really, in Montreat, care about trees a little bit, but there is a massively old oak tree right there. I know it just seems asinine, but it's there. If you haven't been to the property, it's not a vacant lot. I kind of take objection to that. It is a green space. It's not empty. There is something going on there. There's life happening. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about they can build a 25-foot wide house under the current codes. It's not that they can't build any house. And let's see. There's many other rules, but one of the main things we're just coming back to is somebody made a mistake, and it's super unfortunate. And I feel bad for people operating under that fact. But there's a reason this lot has maintained its unbuilt, that it has not been built on, is because other people could see that it's not a house. You could build only a small structure there. It's remained unbuilt on, which every lot in Montreat gets snatched up because we want to live here. It is beautiful. It has large trees and hiking trails. And we want to live here, but we need to circle back on the fact that if we put house upon house upon house, because the next person that comes is going to be your next door neighbor that wants to build a big house closer and wants to be 6 feet away. And that would just change the landscape of Montreat and the desirability to live here, which would impact our real estate values if we put houses close together, because it would change the special qualities of this place.
Thank you.
I have a question for
Yes.
Mr. Oliver. That you are on the right side
Yes, sir.
of this proposal, and the current owner is not correct or incorrect. He's not proposing to impact that side setback to the butt you, correct?
Yes, I'm here
So-
kind of on the behalf of Montreat a little bit, but also the neighbor, I didn't want to bring this up in the meeting, but the way we felt we got addressed by this was completely blindsided and out of the blue, that there was even variances being requested. The wrong sign was put up, which is a mistake anyone can make. We had to catch it because that was asking for a 15-foot variance to be made into a 30. Then we requested paperwork. We got paperwork. We had to get in contact with the neighbor. It was truly, if we're going to consider who's affecting, and we were able to get a hold of her a week ago, and she felt blindsided, but she also could not be here. So I think she sent a letter. Hopefully she did. But there is a hill there that is going to go, her erosion plan. She's very concerned about that and the trees.
But let me go back to the
Yes.
question. The part of the property that abuts you
Mhm.
or your parents
Yeah.
is currently at 15 foot, and that setback remains constant in the proposal. correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but wait 1 second.
No, I get to ask this next question.
Okay, well, I got to
Give me a chance.
answer that because it's actually not in your paperwork that
Okay,
was
but
submitted
Let me
today.
just ask the next question.
Yeah.
On the left side of this lot,
Mhm.
there's another home. Does anybody have an idea of how far?
It's quite far away. It's up the hill, almost,
So more than
almost
30
can't even
feet?
see it.
It's about 75 feet.
About
You-
75 feet. So we've got an effective setback on your common line of 15,
Yes.
and we got an effective setback of 75 on the other, where they're asking it to go from 15 to 10. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now go ahead, please.
Well, what I was saying was it still states in the thing submitted that they want to set back on both sides of 10. And we addressed that about a week ago through emails and
Okay.
just said, hey, we've talked to the owners. They're saying this. We just would like it formalized a little bit too, because that's the only paperwork we have is in essence the documents we're given, right? And so we're given documents that say, words say one thing, writing says another, and we just want clarification on that. Because again, there are more concerns than just whether you're close to your neighbor on this property. Water in general is a huge issue there because of the way it comes through. And I don't know if that, I would like to see the plans address that.
It does show it here on the right side. So if I understand you correctly, if the side setback on the right side, meaning your common line stays at 15, and the other side moves to 10, you have no objection.
I still have an objection because that neighbor wasn't able, she has an objection. So our objection is in line with what she says. She has a lot of concerns about going into that hillside and
So you, not
affecting
her, but you have an objection if on the side opposite you, if it goes from 15 to 10. you
I
an
would have
objection.
objections in general about that in Montreat, yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Does the person,
Her name?
is she submitted anything?
Adrian,
I'm reading her comments.
okay. Her name, what's her name, Dad? Your neighbor, Stephanie Ferrier. She's the neighbor. Yeah.
So if she's online and live at this point, can she?
I spoke with her earlier today. She can't be here, and because of safety issues, we don't have the ability for her to speak, but she did send a letter that Angie's going to read to you.
Great.
She did. Okay, great. And do you have something in writing for us? Can you put something in bullet point form of?
Of all the concerns, I have 5 copies. Would you like to look at them?
Yeah.
They are bulleted.
Main copy needs to go to you.
Chairman, please.
I have a question about, you're addressing the water runoff and other issues other than the setback. And this might be more for the architect, but other than the variances that are being asked for on the side, does the plan address all the other building conditions for Montreat? So water runoff,
Yeah, it does. We did address all of that, and it's actually not a stormwater easement. It's a sanitary sewer easement. That's the 15 foot on the side of this gentleman's property.
okay, so I understand we want to keep nice green spaces and water runoff, but the real issue is the setback. There's no other variances needed for anything else.
That's
Okay,
correct. As far
thank
as I
you.
know.
Yes.
Just wanted to reiterate the thing you said at the beginning, that it needs to meet all of the codes, all of it, not what we're thinking of adding later. We added this as a community. I say we because I feel like I'm very much a part of Montreat. My family is, we love Montreat. 1985, there was a reason to put variances in. And those are the rules we're operating under, and I know you are, and you can make decisions later to change that if you see that in your wisdom. But at this point, it doesn't meet the requirements we read out and doesn't have exceptions within that. And so I don't think a variance should be granted just based off of what I read within that.
Okay.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
So we have subject matter experts with standing. Anybody like to go first? To any rebuttal to any of this? Any observation? Oh, there's more. So, they said they were just going to be in there if they were needed. Okay, so we're the folks in the other room.
We have letters that need to be read.
Okay,
You can ask if there's anybody else here in opposition.
if we're just going to read the letters, let's just go ahead and read the letters. I'll ask for them after.
The first letter is from Stephanie Ferrier and Jeff Schuman. They're the owners of 157 Mississippi Road. We write to oppose the variance request as directly affected property owners and as longtime Montreaters for the following reasons. Number one, there would be no unnecessary hardship in carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance. The application states that the proposed building as currently designed would not fit on the strip of land the owners bought if they adhere to the setback ordinance, and that hardship would result as a consequence. However, basic due diligence by anyone looking to purchase so obviously narrow a strip of land would entail inquiring into the town ordinances to gauge the feasibility of building on that land. And if they were to build what the town has adopted as the applicable building regulations, a dwelling on such a narrow strip might itself need to be narrow. But Montreat has homes of many sizes, and there are many smaller homes that Montreaters enjoy, homes appropriate to the land on which they were built. Designing a home that complies with the ordinance would not be an unnecessary hardship, as a redesign of the proposed home would simply result in a design that would have been proposed in the first place had basic due diligence been followed before coming up with the current design. If the owners determined that an ordinance compliant building would not meet their wishes in a house, and that therefore they will not build if required to adhere to town ordinances, again, this is not an unnecessary hardship, as due diligence would have revealed this from the beginning, thereby making the current situation entirely avoidable. Number two, any special circumstances claimed are the result of the actions of the applicants, or to be more precise, the lack of actions. Any hardship that might be claimed, either not building on this obviously narrow strip of land or redesigning the proposed building so that its location on the property complies with the law would be the result of the property owner's own actions, or rather inaction. This is by the owner's own admission. It is because the property owners did not look into the applicable ordinances earlier, but did so only after purchasing the land and after detailed architectural drawings were developed, that they now request a variance. Number 3, any hardship that might be claimed from conditions peculiar to the property are evident to anyone who looks at the property. The phrase caveat emptor comes to mind. We were quite surprised to learn this past week that someone had bought this narrow strip of land on a steep slope with a view to building on it. As from our experience, it has long been the common understanding in Montreat that this land was not buildable. Just looking at the strip of land makes this apparent, and it seems there may be issues with utilities as well if one were to try to build there. Number 4, granting a variance in this instance would not preserve the spirit of the ordinance, but instead would go against it. The application argues that this variance request should be granted because there are other 10-foot setbacks in the area. This seems to suggest that the Montreat's ordinance is meaningless and not worth the paper it is written on. Just because other properties were grandfathered in or had their own particular circumstances does not wipe out the ordinance. It does not mean that any other property should have to comply with the ordinance either. This goes against the point of having town ordinances in the first place. It also seems a bit much to say that their building will be a benefit to the public. It would be a benefit to those particular property owners, but it would detract from the natural beauty by removing so very many trees and would place a new building mere feet from the house at 161 Mississippi. One also hopes that the ordinance regarding land disturbing activity and its provisions regarding soil erosion control have been consulted, given the natural conditions of the property. Number 5, substantial justice will not be served by granting the variance request. Adjacent property owners should not be the ones who suffer the consequence of the applicants not following basic due diligence before purchasing land and planning a building. Substantial justice would not be achieved if the variance is granted. The application states that the applicants only learned of the town ordinance when putting in for a building permit, and that it would be a hardship to adhere to the town ordinance because they had already gone ahead and had architectural drawings drawn up that do not comply with the ordinance. As mentioned, the exercise of basic due diligence entails checking with the town to see what ordinances apply to building on undeveloped land before proceeding the design of a building. The adjacent property owners should not be the ones to suffer the consequences of not pursuing this basic step. The second letter is from Suzanne and Bill McCaskill. They're the owners of 114 John Knox Road. We are writing to express our concern regarding the above referenced variance on Mississippi Road. About 25 years ago, there was a request for a building permit on the lot. At the time, there was not sufficient room to allow a narrow mobile trailer to be placed on the lot. Consequently, nothing was done and time passed. Now we've been asked to give our thoughts on reducing the side spacing for a new home proposed for the lot. Dropping the side allowance down to 10 feet on each side tends to crowd things considerably and appears to be setting a precedent for future buildings that are requested to build on narrow lots. While we are not directly affected by the proposed adjustment, we would like to support Mark and Denise Oliver at 161 Mississippi Road in whatever resolution they would like to see made. Suzanne and Bill McCaskill. The third letter is from Mary Updike McLaughlin, co-owner of 163 Mississippi Road. To whom it may concern, I am writing to express my opposition to the above referenced variance. It was common knowledge even 20 years ago that this lot was unbuildable. At that time, and with no intention of building, I personally offered the full asking price. My plan was to further ensure the lot remained a vacant green space. Shortly after my offer, the lot was removed from the market. It is my understanding that zoning has been adopted for the benefit of the entire community and respect for the natural environment. Has any consideration been given to the number of additional trees that would be impacted, not only on this lot, but also on adjacent lots, if this variance is granted? Although the application references other non-conforming lots, including neighbors, it is my opinion that this precedent does not justify continuing the practice. Sincerely, Mary Updike. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Questions? Well, I got some questions. So we've got the architect here, we got the builder here, we got the guy that did the survey. Was there ever discussion during that time together? We knew the size of the house, we knew the size of the lot, we knew the size. Was there ever any discussion about that?
I'm sorry, about what exactly?
Okay, so was there any discussion amongst you, amongst the builder, the architect, the surveyor? Was there any discussion prior to this?
The way it works in general is that the owner, is looking to buy a piece of property and often has it surveyed ahead of time, like the Maters did, to make sure it's buildable. The architect uses then the survey, which has the setbacks on it, to design the house accordingly, which is what we did. In fact, that's the way the contracts are written, because we rely on the surveys. And we don't actually meet as a group to discuss, that kind of thing. Not that it wouldn't be a good idea, but that doesn't really happen because nobody's in the same place at the same time typically. And this is the first time I think we've all been together, actually. Does that help answer your question?
That's helpful.
Okay.
Just curious. Do we have other folks that wish to speak or rebut? Anybody in general? Okay. Yes. Go, please.
Obviously, there was a mistake made in the survey, but on our part, we did our due diligence. We weren't going to buy the lot unless there was a buildable house on that. The builder thought we could build a house on it, and everything led us to believe we could just build a small house on this lot. It wasn't a green space. I think there's green space on the 2 lots over there. We wouldn't have tried to buy a lot that was green space. So we bought this with the intention. And everything, we were very careful and deliberate, hired a, architect, a landscape architect, have a drainage plan, all these kind of things, a structural engineer, went through all this due diligence so we'd follow all the rules, and we think the drainage will be even better once it's done there too. Of course, then take out the minimal amount of trees that we could. We're very sensitive, we love Montreat. We've been coming up here for 22 years. So we respect everything too. Understand that the neighbors, would probably prefer that it remains just trees. But, it wasn't, set up that way. It was, a lot that you're supposed to be able to design a house and build on it. And that's all we're attempting to do. Thank you.
Yes, please.
I'm Mark Oliver, Senior. I own the property at 161 Mississippi. My son spoke for me. I feel when we bought the property that it was always a green space. I am the second owner of a 1954 home. And I have talked to Rose White several times about this situation. I'm just going to give you a little history, what I kind of like Karen and Mary did, and they give us the history that her daddy built the property knowing that at that time in 1954 that was a green space, utility easement, stormwater is what we're talking about, utilities. And that although my property is less than 15, it was built then on the regulations. The regulations in 1985 say 15 feet to stop this kind of stuff, to stop, to have erosion, water. Now they're saying that they're given, my side is 15 feet, but they are, and I'm not sure if I read the plans correctly, how far from that storm drain are you talking that you could put a foundation?
From the storm sewer,
Yes, sir.
I will let Matt Ashley speak to that because he worked extensively with MSD.
I think that's very important.
Okay, great.
Sanitary sewer.
It's not a storm sewer, it's a sanitary.
Well, I would assume that even worse, because if you look at my plot plan, it goes straight up that hill to Ted's place, who lives on John Knox Road, into a green space. Now, to me, it appears from the diagram that they have failed to address this access to the storm drain and the maintenance. I believe the green space was for that. Talking to other contractors, they don't come up with a pick and shovel if there's a problem with these giant manholes. And we have manholes that were close off my property, then it reaches and then it reaches. I can show you a survey, which you have, right? How do you, if this goes bad, how are they going to access this? They can't access it from John Knox Road. It's a million miles in the air. It's just, to me, and I can't, because it does state that it's buildable with a small reduction home. That's, I can't fight that. But if you make it larger and bigger, you know, and then we have the tree that nobody's, I have a tree that splits our lot that is 70, 80 feet in the air, and it's called, it's a white oak. If they get any closer, everybody know what the drip edge is? Yeah, I had an arborist come out and look at this. Chances are, it's a 50-50 shot, this tree will die. 5 years, 10 years, don't know. And then they want to put an electric pole right next to it, and you know how big the arbors are. It's going to kill the tree. He said at that point, the tree's dead in 5 or 10 years. But, you know, that's very important to us in Montreat and everywhere. And I talked to Stephanie, and she's concerned because her driveway is on that steep hill, and it's right here. Erosion, anything could take her driveway out. You know, there's just all kinds of ifs, and I think I'd like to have that question answered if you don't mind.
I think you're calling the storm sewer.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's simply a sewer line that comes from, I think it serves 2 houses up on John Knox. And it's an 8-inch line that was put in, I think around 93. We had an extensive talk with MSD about how building a house this close to the easement would affect it. And they agreed that the house could be built up to the easement line, which is 15 feet from the Oliver's property. They did require that the PVC pipe be replaced with a ductile iron pipe, which that has been dealt with as far as having it bid and a contractor line up to do that. So that shouldn't be a cause of concern, that pipe. On the tree, when I first started working with the Maters, they've known this lot for a long time, and one of their favorite loves of this lot is the large tree that you're talking about that sits on the line between the two properties. And they have gone as far as to hire an arborist to look at what impact might be caused with this tree. I noticed also on the plans that were drawn by Maury that it shows the drip line. It shows, you know, potentially how that tree could be affected with building. The arborist that they talked with said here is how the roots would need to be cut by me or actually blasted with air as well. They've taken all the steps that they can to ensure the health of this tree because they love it absolutely as much as anyone else. So they have done what they can to, as much as you can, to guarantee the preservation of this tree. And again, the sewer line is a given. I mean, it's mandated by North Carolina and MSD, Metropolitan Sewage District, as what can be done with that. And I would just add one other thing, that even if the mistake had not been made on the survey, I think that there would be wisdom in seeking a variance for the 5 feet on that side. It creates a house that is much more functional. I think it's aesthetically more attractive. I don't feel like it detracts from the neighbors. So I'll leave it at that with your questions.
I do have a question, if it's okay.
Please.
And this may be more for Maury. You even brought up this idea of this poured concrete wall. It has a top of wall 30 foot in the back corner. I assume this wall is going to retain the earth, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's going to retain the earth and obviously keep everything else in place, all the vegetation. That wall is, if it's 10 foot tall, roughly, it's going to cover.
At the back corner or something, yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to cover the first floor of the house. It's a 10-foot plate height on the lower, according to your drawings, and it's 9 foot above it. So the first level of the house is concealed by this wall. Okay, so that wall is in the dirt, so it's not going to be seen by the
People uphill would not be able to see.
farrier and Schumann.
Right.
It's not visible. It's not a visible wall. Okay. You'll clear that area, and what's between the wall and the property line that's the drainage easement, correct?
You mean the sewer?
No, I think this is a sewer. I thought the sewer was on the right and just the drainage is on the left. Is that right?
It's not an easement on the left. But
No, it's not an easement, but
Yeah.
So we got drainage happening on the left.
Architect deal with the stormwater drainage, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Right.
all right. So really the first floor of this house is not visible because of that wall
From the rear.
from the rear and from the side.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And all drainage is taken on both sides. Yeah, I got it. I just want to understand how much of that house is concealed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anybody else would like, thank you very much. So we do need to reflect the new request in the minutes. It's not what we're presented as far as the smaller use of the setback. So we need to, that's the request be put forward. Let's do it. Okay. Is there anybody in the next room that would like to say anything, discuss anything, rebut anything? Okay. So I guess it's up to us. This is an open meeting, so we will deliberate in front of you.
I do have one more, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I asked way too many.
No, that's fine.
And this is more of a question for you, Adrian. Is the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, I know there's been discussion about redoing the setbacks or other zoning things in the town of Montreat. Has this issue about setbacks, and we have other homes that are 5 foot, has this come up to that committee at all, and have they made any comment to that? Can they give us any knowledge or wisdom?
They have reviewed it extensively and actually are going to recommend not changing the setbacks, but they are looking at implementing some conditional zoning type things that might work in this instance. So that's why they're leaving the setbacks the same.
So the idea from planning and zoning, or whatever they're called, is to have some kind of attach a condition, leave the setbacks as they're in place, and attach some condition for these situations.
So it's called conditional zoning. So the property owner would have the option to present a plan and that's specific to their property
So it's
and
not
be
by right,
reviewed.
it's by conditional. Okay,
Right.
so they come before the planning and zoning,
Right,
make their case, and they're inclined to do such a thing.
right.
Okay, I understand now.
Can I say, I was from the other room.
Please come up, sir. You bet.
So I'm Worth Grant, I'm the contractor. Just to clarify, there's not a drainage issue. The drainage it's well-defined in a creek behind the house to the right of this one, and then exits to the right of that house. And there's not even really an issue with the utility easement that's there, we don't plan on encroaching on that at all. The issue is just really the 5-foot reduction on the left-hand side, just to clarify. Does that make sense, or?
It does, you clarified the issue, which we will,
Yeah, it sounded like from the other end, like, are we sure we're getting what we're talking about? Okay.
it's 5 foot on one side, right?
It's
5-foot reduction on the left side.
reduction
That's what we're
from 15
discussing.
to 10.
That's
Yes.
what we're discussing, not the trees, not the storm drawer, not anything else. It's the 5-foot reduction.
Thank you.
And you did not, and I heard you say you're not modifying the existing drainage flow.
No, I mean, we have a pretty extensive drainage plan.
I see it. That was a little nit is all.
Sure.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a few?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we're in the discussion part of this?
We are.
Obviously, there was a problem with the survey. We're getting ready, after this is all dealt with, to deal with another house on Nisbet Road that is 25 feet wide. So it is possible to build a house at 25 feet, or 24 and a half is what you would be left with, I believe, if you asked for the 15-foot setbacks. I really feel like the problem exists between the homeowners and the surveyor. It's a problem. I think that needed to be worked out between you, not for us as the town board to solve the problem for you that this mistake has made, because you will be able to build something. You would have to, unfortunately, get more drawings made. I know that's an expense. It's a difficult situation, but I'm not sure how we can bend the rules for the variances because of a mistake that was made. Not of our making, I know it wasn't of your making, but I think that needs to be discussed between you and the surveyor. There was another point I was going to make, but I've lost it.
Is it a normal procedure that you would at least stake the corners of the house?
Before construction?
Yeah.
Before construction,
One other thing, I asked Adrian about this. The ordinance was put in 1985, and the comparisons that you made that there are other people that are over the line, again, that was pre-existing construction. Since 1985, I asked Adrian how many new construction were granted variances for this. I think she came up with 4. So to compare, everybody in the neighborhood is out of compliance. It's really not comparing apples to apples. You have to compare it to new construction that has, been given variances. So I think that should be taken into account as well.
So you say there's 5 since the ordinance?
I believe 4 since.
4? Approximately.
Approximately.
Less than 10, more than 3.
Like since 1985, only 4 buildings were granted variances on their setbacks. And I don't even think they were side setbacks either. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the email that you sent me. So I just feel like the comparison there to existing buildings is just not an applicable one. So that was my discussion on that.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
This has the feeling to me of a virus. It's there. And I think I agree with Mr. Oliver on we need to assess the wording of the requirements, the demands of the board for the thought of the use of the word all. Have all the points been met?
If I could, I just wanted to remind you that this worksheet that you have is what your decision needs to be based off of.
That's right.
And it needs to be based on what has been presented tonight. So I think that's where we need to go with it next.
That's right. That's what we were, once we got through with the discussion, we were going to end with each one of the items the same exact way. Regardless of how we rule either way, there's a lot of brainiacs in this room, and now we're talking about 5 feet. There's a lot of people, you know, I feel really bad, but our job is the law. It's not really about emotion, it's the law. And the current setbacks say 15 feet, unless there is a hardship on each one of these, on these items. So where we have to be careful that we follow the law. And so that's what our judgment is going to be either way. And we don't want you to think good or bad about us or Montreat. It's the law, and so that's what we need to rule on. The other options, if we have an issue, you know, we're talking about 5 feet now. I don't know. Surely there's 5 feet, maybe, somewhere. I don't know, 10 feet on one side. I don't know. But I just want to remind you that it's not about Montreat in terms of what we think. It's strictly following these guidelines and go through that as we go through it. Okay, so we ready for our quick discussion? Okay. Item 1, there are unnecessary hardships in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance. That's this page here. Did anybody see this page? It's a blank page. There are unnecessary hardships in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance.
Mark, I feel like it needs to be said that most of the objection was to building anything.
Yes.
It was not to the 5 feet. I just feel like that needs to be said.
Say that again for me.
Most of the objections that we heard was not to varying the setback by 5 feet. The objections we heard was to building anything. That this should be green space. And that somehow the Maters don't have the right to build on this property.
Thank you.
I agree.
Yes. And again, we will be ruling on the specific law of each one of these items, and that's what we got to talk about. All right, number 2, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property and did not result from the actions taken by the property owner.
Did you have an answer to number 1?
No,
She is the taskmaster, isn't she?
Must answer
it was a
that.
question.
Are you going to go through all of them and then come back?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we just got to say yes or no on these things. I mean, that's the deal. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property and did not result from the actions taken by the property owner. Was this actions taken by the property owner? I guess in theory, if you hire somebody, that's the action of the property owner, right? Okay. Any questions, rebuttal on that? The variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and preserves its spirit. The intent of the ordinance is that it's 15 feet unless there is a hardship. That's the intent of the ordinance. And that's what we're trying to do. See now, is this. Number 4, the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. This was the good one that I sit here read over 15 times trying to figure out if that met. Any comments on that? Is there any safety issue?
I don't think it was a safety issue. I'm going to go back to my earlier question to Adrian. If planning and zoning is going to put in place a conditional policy or whatever you want to call it, to go from 15 to 10, would this matter come before us next time or not?
The way the ordinance is written for that specific zoning vehicle, it would be the planning board and the city council.
Okay.
So it'd be two public meetings with a neighborhood meeting and lots of meetings. So
Okay, and what's your guess on the timing if they're going to do that? But what's the likelihood and the timing of that?
I can't speak for the likelihood, but I think it's pretty likely. The timing's probably going to be November, December.
Of this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any possibility of delaying our,
That's what I was asking. Is there?
can we delay this until that has been resolved?
You can delay that. It would be up to the property owner whether they want to delay it till then. But also, I mentioned to them, whatever decisions made tonight, if you deny this tonight, the property owner would not be able to come back to you guys for a year. So if you decide you're going to deny it and they want to kind of think about it, they can withdraw the application and come back to you at a later date.
Okay. And at a later date, it would go into the planning. It wouldn't even come to us.
Unless they came back with a variance and decided to do it a different way. But if it was the conditional zoning, it would not come through you guys.
So it may be in your best interest to withdraw this and delay until the planning board has changed its rhetoric on, or its writing on that. Is that?
Yeah, I would rather them do that than us do something to
Deny,
prevent them
yeah.
for a year.
Yeah. But that's entirely up to you.
Or can we table?
We could table. Like I said, I feel for you guys. So I would think that it would be better for you to make a decision. Or we'll rule now, or we're not making this motion. We're talking at this point. We will make the motion.
Would you like a couple of minutes to discuss it and see, or?
I'd just like a clarification of what's going to transpire in November then.
We can't speak for the planning and zoning board. My question to Adrian was, it seems that they're going to put forth a new condition that would allow you to do what you've intended to do, which would avoid the Board of Adjustment. If we deny this request today, you're prohibited from making an application for a year. And so what we're trying to do is find a workable method, way through this.
Solution, you're right.
And not kill you for a year.
Right.
Or we can approve the thing.
Or we could deny it.
Right.
So
Right.
it may be in your best interest to wait another month or so, talk to whoever amongst yourself, or go ahead and just kind of roll the dice.
Yeah. Can you give us 2 minutes?
Yeah, I was going to say, we can take some time. Can we take a quick break?
Yeah, let's take a 2-minute
Yep.
or 3-minute break. I know we got probably folks waiting.
Robert, I have a question. So when if it's, the property itself, there are extraordinary exceptional conditions pertaining to the property in question due to its size, shape, and topography that are not applicable.
By the way, I hate to
Land structure. Okay. So everybody wants this not built, they sold it.
I'm almost out 80.
Why isn't this an exception? Just that we deny it when it renders the property unbuildable.
223 Assembly Drive.
I would say, because they're going to build it.
Texas Road.
Oh, okay.
I've lived here since 1949.
Yeah, I just, I really.
We moved here when I was 10 years old.
Did you see how many are across the line?
I was living in Wilmington for about 4 years. Hampstead area. The fourth section. I have friends who said you would read every month. I think somebody else is heavily, even Portland. It would.
I've seen her in town hall. I've seen you at home. I haven't seen you anywhere. And Kelso, I haven't seen you anywhere. Have you been anywhere?
CVS, Town Hardware, grocery store, and our debt.
Are you paying attention?
Yes,
Good.
all the time, so that's a lot. And Daniel's doing golf, so that's a nice. Have y'all stayed in town?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, for the most part, we
Yeah.
have. I'm actually helping my grandchildren with their virtual education. I'm the facilitator.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. No, we haven't seen anybody. We like our neighbors too much. We got good neighbors.
How you doing? You doing well?
Thanks for playing. I apologize. COVID got into me and my operation got into me and I apologize. I did send you a couple of emails.
Well, I'm in the learning process tonight.
Pretty straight. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for your food. I just sit there and just go, I just today when I was finishing, I said, this is comfort food, this is love. Oh, yeah. It was.
Oh, my goodness. Now, that's that porch edition.
Okay, all right.
Porch edition.
Okay, maybe we'll make it a real museum.
Well, I think her motion is the best. Let's kick it down the road.
When you go to something, you know, you've never had a baby, so you don't know. But that was this. And, I think the biggest shock
Of course, I don't think you're supposed to talk outside of meeting, I think. But
their facility, a wonderful doctor, Providence, sketch down to just like this. And the procedure, you're asked to stay an hour or 2 hours. The procedure is 8 to 10 minutes. And then put out. There's been no.
Our decision, obviously, is contingent on what they do. We can't make a decision. The law may change. We can't make a decision based on law. It may change. That's not brilliant.
So I have no plans. Only sensation is that, and they go to flower.
Of course, they may come back and we're going to do a trial. And it'll be better for them. Let's hope that wisdom will prevail. We don't need to make a decision that hurts the most number of people possible.
Yes, but eventually I'll have, from here, I can sit in his windows. From my house, there's no way.
No, this little, I can tell, I got a little brown. I do. You're down last week. No.
The lens that I got is, I'll give you everybody here. It's from here to, as far as it's all.
How about you?
All right, I'm not looking at part of it, I'm correcting that this is 161. There is a 15-foot setback here. So this is side. She doesn't even see it. We're taking 5 feet.
It's gonna be 10 foot then.
And she doesn't even see it. I mean, it's quite, it's quite hard. I think we hit the nail on the head. That's not a problem.
Oh, you go in there, so put you on the gurney. Yes. But I never felt,
I think we need to, we got other. Okay, if we could, we need to try to gather back. We do have folks for the next case, so I want to see if we can't get this. Go ahead, sir.
We're going to withdraw our request for now and wait for the ruling in November.
Okay, thank you for that. I'd like to ask one other potential question, not to throw, don't look at me like that, Adrian. There is such a thing as a conditional approval based on the changing of the code. That would be an alternative to withdrawing a conditional approval based on them voting it in. If it doesn't, on such and such a date or whatever, whenever it happens, that would be more forward than withdrawing, in my opinion, if that's a possibility.
The variance and the conditional zoning are two different processes. So for this night and for this request, I would suggest withdrawing it regardless of this future ordinance. This is a whole different process.
Okay. Right. Okay. So then what's being put forth in this meeting is that you will be withdrawing the request until as such time the planning and zoning get together and figure out what they want to do. And that's stated to be sometime in November. Adrian? Possibly. Okay. Okay. Yes, please.
I just want to thank you for hearing our request for this variance. You know, I'm looking kind of like for some grace here because, you know, we really did try our very hardest to get this right. And, you know, we're all fallible, we're all humans, we're all going to make mistakes, and appreciate your support here today and our team. But I just did want to thank you for listening and hope it turns out where everyone can be happy.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think this is a discussion for, we would love to be neighbors. This isn't us versus them. It was very off-footed the way we found out about this. Like I said, the wrong sign was put up. There's no certified letter. My parents were down in Florida taking care of my sister's foster baby, and I had to stop by and see a sign, and then I know nothing, and then check their mail. We're a vacation community, so the current way, people don't have permanent homes here. My dad had to track down the neighbor through the realtor and the person staying there because they're renting it to be affected, so she could only find out 10 days. There should be a certified letter. Yeah, it's just, and then, you know, a mistake happened, but nobody told us about what the mistake was. We're getting paperwork that we're not, frankly, trained to read. We're talking to our friends, taking their time to figure out what honestly could have been brought to us, brought to Stephanie in an easier way, but that wasn't pursued. Instead, it was a vague letter with an application that doesn't have wording that actually accommodates what they want, which is a variance on one side. So I feel like a conversation could be had, but there was no opportunity to have that when there's no reaching out. When the door is open, phone numbers exist and email. So I would suggest that whatever the process is, you look at going forward, that people that are affected the most are made sure they're gotten contacted within, we found out 2 weeks ago, you know, 2 and some change maybe. I'm not exactly sure on my date. That's not really enough time to get your buttons in a row if you're about to go out of town, you know? How does that work for the people it's actually affecting? Which the people that are putting forth the application, I would love to have sat down and go, okay, well, here's my question about the tree. I love that you love that tree. My daughter touches that tree all the time. It's why we love Montreat. But I have no idea. You know, I have no idea. You didn't write us a letter. You didn't do any of those things to let us know the humanity of how much you love Montreat. Let us know so we can be neighbors. I'm excited to be neighbors, but there is a variance for a reason. And future variances are what they are. And that's all speculative, you know? And frankly, I would love to go to that meeting if I'm allowed to talk about the difference between 10 and 15. It's a third reduction. That's a lot over the course of an entire amount of space. And that's just, I would love to see it. And if any way, I'm not much help, but if I can be, our experience was very bad, shocking, involved a lot of stress because it was just super confusing. And I would love for whoever this affects in the future, let's streamline it, you know, send an email, have your neighbor's email, or make sure they get the packet physically, you know, make sure they have it because it sat in a post office box, you know, because we're out of town doing things, you know. That was just my thought. And I appreciate you all tonight. And we do want to be neighbors. We do like you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Number two.
So number two?
so in this case, it's been withdrawn. So this case is now officially withdrawn. And thank you all for your time. The whole zoning thing and the questions of the zoning things and so forth are great questions. I assume you would bring that to when the council is looking at it and voting on it and so forth. You will bring your concerns at that point. That's the valid place to do it. If they're going to change the zoning ordinance or the law, that's where they'll do it. And if you advocate for that, that's where you should advocate it. Now, we will make mention of what you said here, but at this point, that's for them to decide. So, is there any,
Yep.
I know. I thought you ended this one. You end this one and start the,
Okay.
whatever. If we can keep, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. See, I think this is a separate case, isn't, don't you close this one and open the next
Through
one?
that dead horse, right? Through that dead horse.
Yeah, it's very dead. It's dead and buried.
Okay.
There was
Whatever.
wise on their part.
I think so, yeah.
Hey, Mr. in charge.
Just like 45 minutes late.
You're in charge.
Yes, I'm just feeling for both of them. Me too. Both of them. I mean, I just don't know how it's going to end up. But it just, women don't need to be on this board.
Joy.
I
know, she said,
That case.
she said, yeah, and
This is a new
and
case.
he'll say, if I get on,
Officially
she can get back on. She's on.
These are two separate cases.
So I would do it, she would do it again, so I said, okay.
Just got to deliver it.
Oh,
4
did she?
They withdrew it
So
during
what'd she
me.
say?
Just got a credit.
I would think that at this point,
Yeah.
my guess is at this point, you start fresh, just like you're a brand new.
No.
Just like you're a brand, it's a
Y'all
new.
are Jesus the story.
If I'm a quasi judicial thing, or I'm a judge, let's say, I'm gonna say, okay, case dismissed, next case. That's what they do.
Use that
Okay.
gavel.
Huh?
Use that gavel.
The Mississippi Road request has been
Withdrawn.
withdrawn, and so we will
Table that.
table that.
All right. Okay, let's move on.
Yes, two separate cases.
Yeah, use that gavel with conviction.
You bet, you know. Hey, guys. How's it going? Right. How's it going? Were you in here when we,
Swore everybody in.
yeah, well, you're just now coming in, okay.
Well, they'll swear at you. I mean.
Okay. Okay, so next case. If I can find it, this is the Nisbet Lane. Okay, so what we'd like you to do is, we'd like to open this case and we'd like you to swear you in if you're going to make a testimony. So if you would, since we're social distancing, we'll social distancing our hand on the Bible. And I'd like to ask if you would, is the testimony you're about to receive, you're about to give, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, and please note they all raised their hand. Okay. This question before the board, is there any conflicts on this particular case that would prevent you from ruling or being objective? Not objective. Okay. Okay. I'm now opening a hearing on this matter and ask for testimony from the zoning official.
Just another brief introduction. This is another setback encroachment request for encroachment into the 15-yard side yard setback for construction of a deck. the applicant can explain exactly how far they would like to encroach, but that information was included in the packet that you received. And all the property owners within 200 feet received notice as well as a packet of information regarding the request. That packet included the variance application, a site plan, image of the deck design, a schematic drawing of the deck, a location map of the property, and the findings of fact worksheet you will use to make your determination.
Were there any statements from Jason?
We do have one proponent of the project.
Okay.
When we get to that point, Angie will read the.
Great.
Opponent meeting in favor. Okay. Do we have letters of opposition?
We're good? Okay. We'll now hear from the applicant and other proponents of the request. If there are any attorneys present or other representatives who give general testimony to the client's position, we'd like for you to go first. No lawyers? Okay. So, you know, we're all folks and we're all people, you know, and we're here to do the right thing. And you know, our judgment has to be on the law, not whether we like you or not. And so that's what we're going to try to do. But to try to break it up, I'd like to start with this. There were three guys. And you're standing around talking about how the world began and who created the world. And one guy said, well, God had to be a physician because only a physician could take a rib and put it into another thing and create a woman. The other guy said, no, God had to be an engineer because only an engineer could create the chaos, order from the chaos. And the last guy said, no, God had to be an attorney because who do you think created the chaos? Now we'll proceed with it. That doesn't need to be.
Is that why you checked there was no lawyers in here?
So, who would like to go first? And please state, if you would, for the record, what your standing is or who you are and what you represent.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Jay Cove. I think several of you actually know me because I've been going on street since I was yay tall. So thank you for your time. I know it's a late night. I want to be conscientious about that. So I am the licensed contractor. I'm the owner of Simplified Custom Remodeling. Behind me, we have my sales manager, RJ, and the homeowner, Doug Nurnberger. So real quick, my brief statement. I know you've all read the package, so I won't labor that point. But the Nurnbergers initially called us back in January with the idea of, hey, growing family. I think it was mentioned in the last brief that it's a narrow lot with a narrow home. The home is roughly 28 feet wide. And so growing family want to enjoy the vistas of Montreat, which we all do. We all have grown to love and enjoy. But the existing deck on just the North Carolina Terrace side of this home is pretty small and precludes any kind of family gatherings. So the idea was to come out, and before he even called me, they had another architect do some preliminary plans, and it basically became incompatible with the lot to do anything within the restrictions of the existing setbacks. Namely, due to the steepness and topography of the lot would create, some of these third-story high decks very quickly, and it would be nonsense at that point from a builder standpoint. So he called me to come look at this, and I did. One of the things I also do for the community, I'm what they call a certified aging in place specialist, which means when I go through someone's home, I look at, okay, what can we do to keep this home functioning, keep you in the home as long as possible with the idea of keeping you out of nursing homes and things of that nature, because I know every grandparent I've had that visited one as a permanent resident died very shortly after. So it's near and dear to my heart. So as we were going through, I noticed he has issues with emergency egress, namely, as soon as you go in the front door, the kitchen is right there. And if there were ever any kind of grease fire or other kind of fire, your choice is to jump off a second story deck, which wouldn't be nice. So that was one issue. The other is if anybody ever became handicapped, wheelchair bound, or walker bound, there's a step into the house, so that could be preclusive.
Is it step up or step down?
It's a step up into the
Okay,
house.
from the front door.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, anyway, so we decided, we talked about it and we deliberated and came up with a plan that actually meets both situations, I think, where it creates a little more space for his family. But from my standpoint, as an aging in place specialist, it provides another means of access or egress, depending on the situation, that can be done in a safe manner. So that's kind of, from my standpoint as the licensed contractor, things I've noted and things that I think could be easily done. The setback essentially right now is hugging the right side of the home. Our plan really only encroaches, I think at the longest point, 5'3" into the setback. So we're not asking for a total setback, just enough to clearly make a nice 4-foot wide pathway to the front from the deck. And that's really the setback encroachment. The rest of the changes to the deck that we propose are within existing setbacks. If that makes sense. Are there any questions for me as the contractor this time?
I have a question.
Yes.
I actually live on Nesbit, so I'm your neighbor. I went down and looked at the side access, and I see where you want to wrap around. What is the dimension of the side porch right now from the doorway?
The existing one,
Mhm.
I want to say that's 8 feet off that portion of the house. However, if you notice,
No, the side. Right here on you're showing me what you want to do. I want to know the existing one, how far off is it right now from this door? I know there's an existing side porch to the front door. How far out does it project on the side current?
It's 8 feet from the existing deck, but the place where the front door is less. It's probably 4.
I think it's like 3 or, because
Correct.
you're asking 5'3" right now from the front door. Is that correct?
from the longest or most outward point of the house.
Point of the house, right?
Correct.
So it's not that now, so it must be 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Okay. And that's within the setback. So you're right on the setback.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But the deck is suspended, it doesn't have a foundation, it's just on post, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And is it going to stay that way?
Yes.
So it's going to be basically cantilevered without dealing with any substructure?
The side portion of the deck that we're talking about a variance on the setback requirement would require some posts. Absolutely.
Would require some posts, okay.
The front part that's within the setback would not.
It's
That's
just,
what
yeah, no,
we'll use bracing.
thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, anybody else? Please, sir.
Hi. First, I just want to say thanks for letting us come in here and talk about this. We're excited about it. I just want to, Jay talked about the details, so I don't think I need to add anything about that. I do want to say we've talked to the 2 neighbors on either side, because they would be affected the most, and we had great conversations with them. We have a good relationship with the Bowdens and John McMaster, who own the houses on either side, and they're okay. I'm not sure if it's either one of them that wrote the letter or not, but we got a positive response in our conversations. Other than that, are there any questions for me as the owner?
Thank you for doing that. That's very important in our community. Talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep everybody happy. Really appreciate that.
Good.
Anyone else?
I think you got everything.
Okay, so I guess we have some written.
Actually, I have one more question.
Okay.
The front extension, does that go into the 30-foot setback or no? It does not. So it's just the side. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm reading an email from John McMaster. My property is next door to the Nurembergers. I've seen the plans for the walkway and I'm in favor of it. I think it will be an improvement to the property and will enhance the value of my property as well. John Greg McMaster, 291 North Carolina Terrace.
That's on the abutting side, so he's the most impacted. Okay.
Okay, so any other questions or? Okay. And so now we deliberate.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion, and then we can deliberate that. I move that we approve the request for 362 Nisbet Road Lane for the setback proposed.
I second motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any comments? No? All opposed? Yep. I'm sorry.
In the worksheet.
Oh. Ask for the closing statements.
No, the worksheet.
We've got to go through this in the deliberation. We got to answer these.
Yeah, we should do that.
Well, I would say to number one,
Last time.
I would say to number one, the unnecessary hardship, it only having one means of egress into a house is a terrible thing. So I think that would be an unnecessary hardship if we denied this.
This is a second floor egress?
Correct, yes. With the ability to do ADA ramp. So I think you said in your note, it's with the ability to do an ADA ramp, make it accessible pathway. So it's a fire egress and accessible pathway. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, the strict letter of the law would create a possible death by not having an additional way out of the first floor.
What is the zoning or the building code state on that? Is it required by law?
So how to say, no, it is not. It is required to have emergency access or egress from bedrooms and things of that nature.
Are there bedrooms there?
Yeah, just one bedroom. For the home and building.
It's not code, but it's logic. Logic usually precedes the code, or logic precedes everything, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Logic and code don't necessarily get along too well, do they?
Okay. Any questions or?
Can you make sure to hold the microphone to your mouth?
Yes. So did you have something else, Adrian? Is there something, Angie, that? Okay. So what did you propose that we do from what we were getting ready to do that?
Number 3, we're going to now.
Yeah, let's do each one. Let's do number 2. The special circumstances are not the result of the actions of the applicant. Make sure I'm looking at the right one
No,
here.
this worksheet right here.
Yes.
That one right there.
Yeah. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property and did not result from the actions taken by the property owner.
Correct.
Correct.
I was very impressed with the idea of trying to keep people in their own homes as they age and make it ADA accessible. And I know that's not exactly what they're talking about there, but that is what persuaded me. It might be a little bit forward thinking in that we're not bound by ADA codes in our own homes. But I do like the idea of making homes accessible as we age.
I think that would answer number 4.
Okay.
When the public safety is secured.
Yeah.
It's about making it ADA, you know, so I think that would be answering number 4. So we've done number 1 and number 4.
Well, the thought there could be, is that going to be required right this minute? Is that where they go later to get, if the person wants to put in a ramp? Is that happen then, or does that happen now? Or does that factor into the decision because they're doing it now, this particular case? Just curious. You know, we're thinking forward. Is forward thinking applicable to making the decision? I have no answer. These are
I think
questions.
it helps in making it necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And public safety, I mean, that's going to preserve the safety of the occupants of the house.
Okay.
Okay.
Going up, the variance is in harmony. This additional deck is not going to change the nature, use, or what's happening on this property.
Number 3.
Right,
Number three.
Yeah.
And number 2, I was going to tag to your number 1.
Okay.
Same answer.
Okay, so do we want to try this and we'll just say, each one will just say objections, or, in other words, we need to find out if there's not, if every single one, we need to state that every single one was met.
Yeah. I've written.
Okay.
So now we can vote on the motion, right?
Yep. Good so. Motion is before the,
Should we do it again? The motion?
Motion is to grant the variance,
yeah,
restated, not changed, just restated.
right. Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
Chirp, 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 chirp.
There you go. Appreciate you guys coming in.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to.
Before you adjourn, may I make a request?
Please do so. We can,
I'm the rookie here.
yes, sir.
I need to see, match a name with everybody's face. Are these the members that you listed in the material you sent out to us? Mark Spence, the chairman, that you, who is Martha Chastain?
Martha Sanchez, I'm Edith Dix's daughter.
Okay. Margaret Waterstrat?
Right here.
Okay. Ann Kelsko Hewitt, is that you? Eleanor James?
You get this one wrong.
And by
If you get this
process of elimination, that's Celeste. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I think I know those two.
We should have done that in time.
Thank you. My
Okay,
name
so
is,
the meeting is now
Thank you.
officially adjourned.
Woohoo, yay.
Thank you.
Adrian,
Thank
do
you
you have
both very
anything
much.
coming up? Any other